Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. You're here because you want to learn about how to live a healthier life, how to live more sustainably, how to take your everyday actions and make them work for you and the planet. Sometimes it might feel like you've got this figured out, and other times you probably feel lost. That's why I'm here. Together, we will learn how to live happier, healthier lives without the need to be perfect, and always allowing space for a little cluelessness on this journey to living a more conscious life. Lauren Plunkett is back. Author of Type 1 Determination, Lauren is back to bust vegan nutrition myths and shed some reality on New Year's resolutions. Here we go. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals? By now, you all know that therapy is an important part of my own self-care. It has truly been a game changer in every aspect of my life, including achieving goals. BetterHelp is the largest online therapy platform worldwide. They are changing the way people get help with facing life's challenges by providing convenient, discreet, and affordable access to a licensed therapist. BetterHelp makes professional therapy available anytime, anywhere, through a computer, tablet, or smartphone. You can start communicating within 48 hours. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help. It is professional therapy done securely online. And I have a special offer for Consciously Clueless listeners. Visit betterhelp.com/Carly and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. By using this code, you get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/CARLY. Take care of yourself today. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. Welcome back to the podcast, Lauren.
Thank you. Excited to be here for another fun topic, diving into something a little different this time.
Yes, last time you were on the podcast, it was very clear that one, both of us could talk about these things forever and be quite content. And two, 1 hour the first time just wasn't enough. So I'm very glad you're back.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's so nice to be able to have like-minded conversations when it comes to nutrition.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that we didn't get into last time, that was kind of the impetus of me coming to find you after your presentation at VegFest, because as you were starting to talk, I literally was texting my friend who I tell everything about the business with. I just found out somebody else I want on the podcast. She's been talking for a minute and a half and I am totally into it. So your approach to talking about nutrition was so refreshing because you are honest and give facts, and you're not pulling any punches with things. You're like, this is the reality, this is the truth, this is the science. Let's talk about it. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've worked really hard over the years to try to figure out how I can introduce plant-based nutrition to all kinds of eaters. So I call it making friends with all people, because any of us that are in a position to be at a dinner table with friends or family that we're eating different things, those of us that have a moral connection to food, it's always going to be hard on us. And I know a lot of us just want to completely avoid the conversation. Let's just stay neutral, follow all the rules that you're supposed to follow at a family dinner, stay really on neutral topics and don't go there. But when it comes to vegan eaters, it's a religion for us. It is a very strong belief system. And because that's where I stand, I realize, I'm an evidence-based practitioner. I have to be really fair in how I talk about nutrition. And I first need to understand, where is someone coming from? Because I'm seeing them from a position where we're either trying to prevent or improve chronic conditions. And what I want to do is help them eat to treat the whole body. And if I'm seeing type 2 diabetes, depression, some kind of other inflammatory type of ailment, their joints are hurting, gout might be present, I'm absolutely going to go into plant-based nutrition. But my approach to it was, let's talk about high fiber foods and what you're not eating versus people feeling hammered about what they are eating.
Yeah, and it's an intimidating thing.
Yeah, it's intimidating, and then there's shame attached to it, because me growing up in endocrinology with having type 1 diabetes, it was this carbohydrate stuff. Carbs, and carbs are bad, carbs are bad. And we'll get into that with the myths of eating vegan.
Yeah.
But carbohydrates they're the glucose. They are the powerhouse. They're the energy of where we're getting most of our nutrients. So we have to reframe our conversation, reframe our language around carbohydrates. And that might have been somewhere where I went right away in the presentation too, was just reframing all of our language around food and then being able to tell fact from fiction, which is always going to be challenging in the social media world of food
Yes.
marketing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that what you said about the shame and what people can add in, what are things that you could eat more of is such a good approach, because any of us are going to have that kind of reaction when someone says, cut this, cut this, cut this, take this out, take this out. And if you start there, you're like, well, okay, you just said all of the things I grew up eating and that are normal, I should not be
Mhm.
eating. So what the hell am I going to do?
Exactly. Have you ever had someone say to you, I'm so confused about nutrition that I don't even want to eat anymore? Have
No,
you ever heard that? I have heard
no.
that. Yeah, there's a term out there loosely called ortho, and it has to do with, yeah, just now you're looking at the ingredients list and you're panicking because you're not sure what carrageenan is or like
Yeah,
some other
yeah.
additive or preservatives. Yeah, things that are even sugar substitutes, things where we have to understand, like, are they harmful to you as an individual? Is there a reason why you need to be really careful about certain foods if you're going to stay away from dyes? Sure, chemicals, absolutely, but have some understanding of which foods are acceptable for you and which ones are absolutely not for health reasons. And that can cause so much panic, especially when people are having
Yeah.
sensitivities and they're not really sure what their allergies are. One thing that
Mhm.
makes me nervous is when people just completely start cutting gluten, but they haven't actually had a test for gluten. We want to know for
That
sure.
trend hit hard. Everyone was all of a
Yeah.
sudden, oh, I don't
Yeah.
eat gluten. I don't eat gluten. When I was trying to figure out being lactose intolerant, i.e., not a baby cow,
Uh-huh.
when I was going through that journey, I cut out gluten just to try to see if I could feel better at one point, and it wasn't that,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
it was I mean, I think it still is, but it feels like it was just like such a trend, the gluten-free
Yeah,
vibe.
it's what's even more, just to add fuel to the complicated and confusing fire. It's all the restaurants that feel the need to have a gluten-free menu, but they don't have a vegan one. Come on.
Yes.
Or
Thank
dairy free,
you.
which is I mean, so many people have issues with dairy and you don't have a dairy free menu. I'm sorry that your professional chefs can't figure out how to cook a vegetable as the main. It just,
Yes. It's
it shouldn't be
wild.
that difficult.
No, it should
Yeah.
not
And
be
it's the
that
trend.
difficult.
Yeah. Or you've got, there are a couple of restaurants in the city here that really cater to diet culture. And it really ticks me off with giving, catering to titling meals as keto, paleo,
Ugh.
those type of terms where we really need to, as restaurants, I'm challenging restaurants and asking them to be smarter than that.
Yeah.
This is not what we're trying to do for people, is have them still going into your restaurant and they're still probably eating a 900-calorie meal that may not be so nutrient rich, but you're still going to call it cater to their the fad diets. So not the
Yeah.
greatest environment, right? But yeah, when it comes to allergies, the gluten-free thing or trying to cut things out and really not having certainty about it, it's tricky because there could always be more to that story that we want some facts on. And if someone wants to cut out gluten after finding out that they aren't, that they don't have celiac disease, that they aren't
Right.
positive for this allergy, then that's totally their call. But that also means there's something else attached to that food that is getting
Yes.
you probably some kind of a chemical in farming. And it's so hard to nail that down because people have varying levels of sensitivity to the stuff that could be in a bag or a box.
Well, and I think that what you said about someone saying, I just don't even want to eat anymore because nutrition is so confusing. And I haven't necessarily heard that, but I do think that I've heard or understood people talking in a way that is, it's so confusing, why bother, like who's right,
Yeah.
who's right or wrong, really. If there's this diet says this, the other one says this. I remember a friend saying to me, well, this guy that was a vegetarian and was like super healthy, his whole life had a heart attack, so what's the point? And so it's
Oh
just
boy.
when you're
Yeah.
inundated with shitty information, you do kind of shut down. It makes sense
Yeah.
why people might shut down in this world.
And it's jumping from fad to fad to fad, or confusion to confusion to confusion. The almost So what I will see in that's almost kind of nice to see is that the
Hmm.
one thing they haven't tried is eating like they love themselves.
Ooh, damn.
Yeah, right. So the one thing I'm hearing that you haven't tried is eating because you want to heal, because you're eating because you want to punish yourself when you continuously choose restrictive diet after, right? It's eating for punishment. Binge eating is eating for punishment, and that's something that is psychological. That is a therapeutic issue. We need to talk about something underneath it all, just like anorexia and bulimia are psychological, mental and emotional situations, more so than it is about the food. We have to get to the bottom of what's happening here. We have to get to the
Right.
bottom of to the bottom of, why do you keep choosing a fad diet? Why do you keep abusing yourself with food by restricting the nutrients that you need? So that actually can make it quite simple to introduce high fiber nutrition
Mm.
if you can peel back the layers and show someone, simply put, you're eating for punishment. Why are you punishing yourself so much? Let's eat like you love yourself. And then we can really get somewhere by eating to treat versus eating to punish.
I'm really stuck on that. Like, what if you were eating to love yourself? That's a really powerful statement and a powerful question. I'm sure you stop people in their tracks with that question. You stop me.
The question I'll first pitch is, if you woke up tomorrow in your ideal state of health, what would that John eat like?
Mm,
What would you eat like if you woke up tomorrow? Because the goals can be a little bit tricky. They can be very body conscious, right? Like someone might have a
right.
goal, and we could even get into like resolution versus goal here, is
Yeah.
that someone might say that they really want to be a certain size, or they want to lose this very specific amount of weight. Like, I want to get back to my college weight. You'll hear adults say things like that a lot, which may or may not be realistic. So you then have to start painting a realistic picture. So even without knowing exactly what they want their body to look like, if you can ask them a statement of, what would that John look like what would that John eat like if you woke up tomorrow in your ideal state of health?
Hmm.
Because you'll never exactly know what someone's fears are or thinking in the back of your mind. Like, the doctor told me I have high cholesterol, my blood pressure's high, I'm stressed out, I'm kind of pissed off at my family. All these things start to
Yeah.
go through.
Yeah.
And you might not want to know, particularly as a dietitian, like, I don't want the whole reel because it's too heavy on me. You need therapy for all of these things. But they just like flash, flash, flash. They had like a million thoughts all at one time when you ask them that question. And then they can all of a sudden go, well, I probably wouldn't go through the McDonald's drive-in on my way to work anymore. You go,
Mm.
okay. Well, you just answered your own huge problem, or you just got over your own gigantic barrier out of a visual exercise.
Yeah.
So if people can visualize themselves into a healthy state on their own just by thinking, gosh, I do really want this. How am I going to get there? And it's the habits that I probably shouldn't keep doing to help me get there. But then we have to fill in the blanks. Okay, if you stop doing this, now we got to enrich your body with what it's missing. So we just focus on the missing. And that's how we can talk to all different kinds of eaters or all different kind of goals with filling in the nutritional gaps. And
I love that approach. It's so much more focused on what is your body, what is your mind, what do you need versus what are you going to have to get rid of. And you mentioned the goals and resolutions. This came up really briefly in the last one. I was like, I want to hear more from you about that too. And we're recording this before January, but this will come out in January, this episode, and tis the season for everyone to be losing their marbles because they are going to become a completely different person come January 1st. Everything's going to fall into place come the new year. And not that I don't love, setting intentions and thinking about what you want for the new year. I think that's amazing. But there's kind of a toxic culture around that resolution idea too. Can we get into that a little bit?
yeah, I guess happy 2023 to everybody, since we can confirm
It's so
it.
wild.
Yeah, we'll make it to January. I like how you said intention, because one of the first things people start seeing, depending on what your schedule is like, is right after Christmas, usually around the first of the year, is when you're going to see diet commercials pushing hardcore. So
Wow.
dieting programs, and they're not all bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but their marketing is strong and they pay a lot of money for their marketing so that you will opt in to their program so they can send you a meal plan and restrict you. So it's another one of those situations where you got to make an intuitive call. Is this going to be good for me? Do I want to enter into another one of these? Or if it's your first time going into a diet program, look at how much it's going to cost you. But the big question is, what am I going to learn from this? And if I do lose weight, because they're promising me I'm going to, am I going to be able to maintain it? Because if you're a success, they're a success, but not too much of a success that you don't come back and pay them more money.
Ooh, shit.
Sorry, guys, calling you out.
That's capitalism, baby.
Right. And so a resolution is a goal. And then there's a difference between I want versus I have to. So like I want is desire, and desire is a very cool word. Desire is like, I'm hungry for this. I want this, like I feel like a powerful woman. I'm going to like go after this, or a powerful man, or whatever. However you identify with your desire, that has strength to it. I have to has an undercurrent of guilt.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like a little tiny bit of like, I have to, here's one I've heard many times. I have to fit into a dress because my daughter's getting married in June. That's a huge one. Or I have to fit into a bathing suit because I want to look smoking for Jamaica, by
I mean,
March.
it's such a trope, right? How many sitcoms and movies have we seen some woman doing something because she's got like a class reunion coming up or a wedding or whatever it is? I mean, that comes up again and again in pop culture even.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, you can go out and hire that dietitian, hire that personal trainer, or you can opt into Weight Watchers or some other program. But keep in mind that the I have to, if there's an undercurrent of guilt, what it ends up being is that you're following a rule until like a certain time, and then go back to what I was doing. Then I'm going to go back to where I was. And I don't think anybody wants that, but that's what restrictive habits do, is I just need to get into this dress until then. So what people do is they're going to hardcore diet to drop 8 sizes or whatever it may be. And then the wedding's over, vacation's off. Or while I was on vacation, I put 10 pounds back on because I was restricting myself so bad. And I just let her all go. And then there comes even more guilt, feeling like, well, I can't maintain where I was, or now I put weight on. There's like this double whammy of as if you were doing something wrong in the first place. And the only issue there is you time restricted yourself so hard that it wasn't a realistic plan. So let's find a realistic plan. And then you'll never have to act like I have to get into a dress by a certain time. You'll be at that size to maintain, but we've got to find the equilibrium. Instead of a crash tactic, it's crash tactics from jumping one to the next, to the next, next. So it's desperate thinking. And that is what diet marketing capitalizes on, is desperate thinking. So then I want the desire. The desire could be to feel better. So I want is the desire. So if you're going to make a resolution that is a goal, what you actually want to say to yourself is, I want to feel better. I want to feel hot and sexy and energy and good about myself, and whatever word that you're looking for, because weight loss will be a side effect of you achieving the feeling.
Yes.
So we twist it. We flip the script on how we plan a resolution, if that is how people want to look at in 2023. I am gonna, just have that bang and bod. But what's underneath that, the how then isn't based on desperate thinking, but it's going to be based on realistic steps, a relationship with yourself. There are things that will have to be set in place. And what's really underneath desire are questions that need to be answered. Like, do you have a difficult relationship with food so that you don't fall into diet culture again? Steps to this, like really looking at your kitchen and going, gosh, I have a partner who keeps bringing in cookies and candy. So my first conversation I need to have is with my partner to say, I really want to get healthy this year. I need you to do this with me. And if you're not going to do this with me, we're going to have a serious conversation.
Yeah.
So, right. Like I love you. I need you to support me. But if you're not going to support my health, we're going to have an issue because I can't live like this. You see couples that do things like that together, and it's awesome. They get healthy together. And so the whole household has to jump on that healthy ship together. It would be like that first conversation. The other one would be, who can help me learn how to have a healthier relationship with food? Do you have food trauma that you got to talk about? So there's never like a one note to that resolution. It's dig deep. That's why we quit, because it's a deep, deep, deep thing that we're
Yeah.
actually got to look at
You
after
got
the
to
years.
do some work there. I mean,
Yeah.
food is so much more than food for us in our
Yeah.
culture. There's so much attached to it. I don't know if you like stand-up comedy,
Sure.
but Taylor Tomlinson is a comedian. She has two Netflix specials and
Mhm.
I love her. I think part of it is like she's a millennial that talks about things and I'm like, yes, yes, I can relate with this one. When she was talking about how she is in therapy, she talks very openly about her mental health
Mhm.
and she's talks about being an emotional eater in her stand up and saying like because of therapy I realized that the moment I became an emotional eater was because I had food in my hand when my dad said my mom had died.
Wow.
And she of course makes this into a bit that is relatable, but at the same time
Mm.
I that part has been sticking with me. I was like, imagine how many of those traumatic events alter how we look at fueling our body.
Yeah. Yes. I wonder if she came to that conclusion herself, or if someone helped coach her into and asking
Therapy.
her, yeah, like really coaching and asking. What I call it is pulling threads, because it takes a while to get
Right.
underneath the literal weight of what people are carrying
Yeah.
is right. Like I'm overweight because of the way I eat. And the question is, why do you eat the way that you do? And then they go, oh, I'm stressed. Why are you stressed? And sometimes what immediately pops out is, well, a parent did this. And maybe for her, she got to that conclusion that, yeah, I lost my mom. And oh my gosh, I realized that I go back to that moment and I eat the same thing. So that's that beautiful awakening that someone can come to you, that where we finally get to the root of what's causing your relationship with food to be complicated. And isn't that just such how it speaks volumes for obesity?
Yes.
Like, you're just gonna, like, doc, you're just gonna throw somebody a drug and act like that's gonna work? You haven't even
Yes.
come close to finding out who the human being is and
And
why they
it
eat
might
the
be
way they
making it
do.
worse, right? I mean, that's
Totally.
that's masking it.
Exactly. And when someone has a history of jumping from a weight loss drug to a weight loss drug to a weight loss drug, it might work for a while and then it doesn't work. And then they got to switch to another medication and they end up on that cycle. What happens along that cycle is they spend a ton of money. They go into fad dieting. And again, we finally get to the place where we realize the one thing you haven't done is eat like you love yourself.
Ugh.
That's it.
This podcast is supported by Parade Underwear. Parade believes that the materials that touch your skin should be as comfortable as possible, wherever life takes you. That's why their styles come in a large range of fabrics, from seamless universal that disappears under clothes to cozy waffles plush comfort that keep you comfy on every occasion. Parade understands that everyone deserves to express themselves however they choose because we're all unique. And Parade knows that there's no parade without our planet. They strive to make all of their products from reclaimed, recycled, responsible, renewable, or regenerative materials. This is really a win-win-win. I love Parade. I've been wearing them for a while now, and I can't recommend them enough. And of course, we love the mission. Use code consciously.carly for 20% off your first order. That's consciously.carly, consciously.carly. Enjoy your new undies. This podcast is supported by North. North's mission is to provide unique and innovative cannabis products to help bring peace, calm, and healthy alternatives to their consumers. All of their products have been meticulously designed and formulated by co-founders Brandon and Mike to ensure that their customers receive nothing but the highest quality. Currently, they offer 3 product lines: Vibes, a THC CBD seltzer; Gummies, THC gummies; and Fusions, a CBD wellness beverage. I'm a huge fan of the THC CBD seltzer. My current favorite flavor, blackberry mango. Use code CARLY15 to get 15% off your order at drinkthenorth.com. That's CARLY15, or hit the link in the show notes. Enjoy drinking the North.
Let's go there. And that's where it's actually quite easy to introduce plant-based nutrition, because if they're nutrient deficient in the process of restricting a lot of healthy foods, also what comes out is, well, I thought carbs were bad. I thought I couldn't ever
Right.
have rice or grains or whole grains or beans, or all of that was bad. And then you're actually teaching them to accept that healthy foods are the truth.
and this probably goes without saying for listeners of this podcast at this point, but I'll say it anyway, is that I don't think you or I, and correct me if I'm wrong, are coming from this place of judgment for this, right? We're
Right.
like, this system sucks. This
Mm,
diet culture sucks. I see why people fall prey to it. It's easy to. I mean,
hmm
it's just like you said, it's feeding off of our fears and insecurities.
hmm
It's why it's so
hmm
popular. Fad
Well, that's
diets
why
are so popular.
it's a billion-dollar industry, the supplements that aren't even regulated. I mean, come on, you can call something Oxycut or whatever, fat burn. All it is hopped up on ginseng and caffeine, and it's going to make you feel like your heart's going to explode. So you think you're losing weight and probably makes you nauseous, so you don't want to eat.
Well, and
It's not science.
I have some body privilege here to not ever thinking much about my weight. But even when you said going to doctors and stuff, this is showing my ignorance. There are prescribed medications for weight loss. Like you can go to the doctor.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And what do they do? I mean, you don't have to say everything, everyone, but I'm just curious, like
Mhm.
what science is that?
Well, I can tell you in specific industries, particularly in
Hmm.
diabetes. In
Okay.
diabetes, the research right now, international conferences came out this year really saying that obesity is the number one thing to treat in diabetes care. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, no kidding. You think like we should be talking about healthy weight, but if we're going to address someone's weight, our questions should actually be, tell me about your relationship with food. Because when someone is diagnosed with diabetes, sometimes they get the third degree about what they're eating, and that is not the friendly way to enter into this. There's already tons of guilt. They probably already have
Yeah.
people in the family that have diabetes. And with type 1 diabetes that I have, it's food police. You feel like everyone is judging you for the way you eat,
Mm,
and then they look at your blood sugar records and all of this darkness about perfection and meeting your numbers, and you find that your self-worth is tied to a number. So
mm.
in the diabetes world, there are certain medications that are designed to help people lose weight, and what they actually do is they are appetite suppressants. But what I see them doing is they make someone feel so sick for the first week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe even a month, that they don't want to eat.
That's gross.
So my concern is, are we just trading one disordered eating pattern for another now? And that's what worries me as a practitioner, as a dietitian. And I know I've got a partner who is an intuitive eating counselor, and we've talked in depth about there's this standard now that when people are diagnosed with diabetes or they're obese, that they can be prescribed certain appetite suppressants and they're
Wow.
approved. But if they're not having a full assessment, a nutrition care process assessment is what we call it in medical nutrition therapy, is if we're not in there doing that, which is fairly rare in primary care, then that person could end up being taught or picking up even more unhealthy habits than they had to begin with.
Wow.
And if you lose weight, you get positive reinforcement for not eating. And it will backfire. The medication will never stay that strong, or they'll go to the doctor and they'll be like, I'm so nauseous, I can't work. And I know I need to eat, but I'm not. So the doctor might just say, we're going to cut this medication out, which is responsible. The doctors will be like, okay, not going to happen. But a lot of doctors will want to just decrease the dosage and then bump it back up again.
Or like, here's something for nausea.
Yeah. Right. And yeah, that could be added on top of it. And that is where there is, you can kind of see where what I'm getting at is the enormous opportunity for counseling,
Mm,
for nutrition coaching, for that type of therapy that people are seeking. All we're doing is maybe accompanying somebody to the grocery store with a grocery list. I mean, that's the beauty with plant-based coaching, is people do need to start from wherever they need to start. And that could
yeah.
be in so many different places that seem like, to us, you get to a certain level and you're like, I know so much now. I know what I can do with this and I want to share it with everyone. But there are so many people out there that need just the absolute basics of, go to the grocery store with me, please. I just teach me how to use the microwave and throw some things in that are going to be super easy so that I can take food to work. If we're not
I,
even doing that,
yeah. Yeah. Totally. That is such a good reminder, especially as, like you said, you're like, oh my gosh, I have all this information. I love this. I want to tell everybody about it
Mhm.
and everyone to listen, but you can't start with where you're at now when you're sharing, right? I have a
Yeah.
client who literally was like, I want recipes. She's a younger woman. I want recipes that are like 5 minutes or less. That is all I can handle. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
school, I'm in high school, I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm doing. So like, can you find me things that are 5 minutes or less? And I was like, okay, we got to
Mm-hmm.
start with what are the absolute bases that you could open your fridge and have a meal in 5 minutes. That's not
Mm-hmm.
ideal, but yeah, like if that's where you're at, okay, we'll find things that are
Mm-hmm.
somewhat nutritious and delicious and
Mm-hmm.
you can get in 5 minutes. And of course I'm like, but what if you had 10 or 15? And it's like, nope, she
Yeah.
doesn't. She doesn't. She
Yeah.
has
Yeah. Yeah.
5 right now. And that's, and like, I got to start there. And it's hard, but it's
Mm-hmm.
important to remember that, at one point I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of a cool challenge because there is creativity in that. There's, and you start to find like, okay, I've got like 4 meals that really work right now for dinner. So I'm going to rotate those through. And then when they
Yep.
have a chance to expand, right, you can expand on it. One area that I really struck gold for people that made it so much easier on me is I went on Walmart.com and I took screenshots of plant-based foods that I could then just put on a document and PDF it to people as a grocery list.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, 90-second grain bags that people can microwave that are like mixes of barley and wild rice. When you're in the process of reading labels, for anybody listening that's kind of tapping into this and looking at this high fiber nutrition, is what's really amazing about grains is there's so much fear around grains. Like wild rice and barley is the really great thing about grains is they are the foundation of a lot of different cultures too. For having those conversations and trying to bring people back to the earth, to what they knew growing up if they did not grow up in the States, is that we can kind of help, tell me more about what it was like eating for you as a kid. If you were
Yeah.
from Puerto Rico or you were from Mexico or Asia, like what was it like for you? Tell me about those foods. And then we can start working back into that. And there's a lot of grains out there that are in these like 90-second microwavable bags. You can just pop them in the microwave and they're in 2 perfect portions. So you're accidentally teaching portion control. And by the way, look at that label because there's a ton of fiber in it and there's protein. And where there's fiber in those whole grains, there's also protein.
Yes. Yes. And I think that is, let's segue into some of these myths, right? Because you mentioned protein and
Oh boy.
that's a big one, right? When you tell people you're vegan, we joke about this, but it's so true. All of a sudden everyone thinks that they are a certified nutritionist and have all these questions about where you get certain levels of this and that, which is so funny because I understand that it's coming from people's misunderstanding, defensiveness, shame, all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always back to fear and insecurity at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
people really get upset. Some people get very upset.
Mm-hmm.
They're worried about your life. Like, how are
Yeah.
you walking around on this earth without eating meat or whatever it is? So,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of these vegan nutrition myths specifically that we just need to bust?
Awesome. I've got 6. And we
Yes.
could we could totally workshop this. We could start with like 50 and whittle them down to 6 probably, right? But I kind of when I put this topic together for Veg Fest, I was like, let me just hit the ones that I could rattle off the top of my head and go with those because we could talk about those at any point in time. And number one certainly was that plant protein is inferior. So it's not just where do you get your protein from, but there will also be professionals that say that plant protein is inferior, which what we're thinking of is there are amino acids. So proteins break down to amino acids. There are 20 of them. 9 of them are essential. So we have to eat them. Here's what people should know. Write this down. All plants contain all 20 amino acids.
Wah, wah,
All
wah,
plants.
wah, wah, wah,
All plants
wah, wah.
contain protein, right?
I need a
And
soundboard or something.
yeah, and I'm just going to say all plants, meaning the substantial plants that we eat the most of, the ones that we are going to fuel our diet, the substance from the earth, the starchier vegetables, but also those water heavy vegetables, our broccolis and our green peppers, our mushrooms, they contain all 20 amino acids in varying amounts. So what the ticket here is to meet your protein needs. The first thing people need to know, let me back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Before anyone is so worried about our protein needs, the answer might be, thank you so much for your concern, but do you have any idea how much protein you need? Because most people have no idea how much
No
protein they need
clue.
to eat in a day. Yep. And if their answer is yes, my personal trainer told me 1 gram per pound. Source wrong. It's 1 gram per kilo that is a safer amount to default to, and that's almost half of what a pound is. So don't overeat protein, because protein is a use it or lose it nutrient. We're not going to use all the protein that we need because amino acids break down to urea, and urea sounds a lot like urine. Well, guess what? We're going to pee out the amino acids because they become toxic. They have nitrogen in them, and we can't keep that in our body. We have to move it through. So the first thing is, as an individual, find out what your specific protein needs from a reliable scientific source. I might have that available on my website. If not, it's in my book, plug. But it's how, right? It's how people can actually assess their own protein needs. So if you know you need 60, 70, 80 grams a day based on your activity level, it's also based on the body size that you're trying to work towards. So if you're trying to lose weight or gain muscle, we can gauge our protein needs based on that. So again, we eat to treat, we eat for fuel. We don't eat into this like dark hole of a guess as to how much we need. Carbohydrates are the same. We want to eat as much as we know that our body can utilize. Same with fat when it comes down to how many grams do you need in a day. So plant protein is not inferior. The key there is also to eat a variety of foods. So you wouldn't just say, I can get all my protein from broccoli. Still, I still want you to have a wider variety of plant foods here. If people choose to throw in meat substitutes and you want to go with soy products, tempeh, go for it. I'm not going to shame anybody for trying meatless products at all. That is a total individual decision. Just like I wouldn't shame people who eat eggs from their chickens that they treat as pets, who are their friends. I think that's also something in the vegan community that we have to be kind of careful of, is judging people based on how vegan they are, as they love their chickens and they care for them. And they also rescued their chickens and they're still laying eggs because of the horrible ways that they were treated in a factory farm setting. That is vegan. That's love. That's okay.
Well, it's also the thing too, right? It's like, even if I wouldn't do that, even if that bothers me, in the grand scheme of what we're trying to do, that's small potatoes.
Exactly.
That's not the thing that should anger us to our core.
Yeah,
it should be the systematic farming or the bullshit nutrition lessons, like those. I've come a long way in that part of my vegan journey of just realizing, like, who's the enemy here? It's not the individual trying their best.
Exactly. Yeah. The vegans got to support vegans, plant-based got to support plant-based, and cheer each other on for that. That's a good way. That's a good ending into part two here, or part two, number two, which was just a very blank statement. Soy is bad.
Yes. I still have people ask me that.
Yeah, that one will always happen. I pretty much said, I know I said at VegFest, no, it's not. The science has spoken. It's almost like,
moving on.
Right, move along. And so I think that people can, if you're going to reliable sources like Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, nutritionfacts.org, you're going to find the facts about soy.
Yep.
The thing to know about soy certainly is, if you're going to go buy soy products, it's probably a good idea to look for the non-GMO. Just go ahead with the soy. And the least amount of processing. Maybe you're more comfortable doing edamame, so you're doing the soybean, versus doing the tofu itself. There are people that have allergies to soy. So that's another area just to be sensitive. It's an allergen, so we should think about that. It's also one of the oldest foods on the planet. Thank you, Japan. So soy has been around for a while, and we've been freaking out about it just because it is challenging the amount of animal products that we eat. And the dairy industry loves to slam soy because soy milk has taken them on. So, I mean, studies that are funded by dairy, you think that a dairy funded study is going to say soy is good? It's not. They can buy the science. So that's number two. Number three, top 6 myths of eating vegan. Number 3, too many carbs.
Oh my gosh, let's get into it. I know you've got opinions on this one.
So who is dishing out the macro advice? And I'm saying macro in air quotes because macro is a word that doesn't actually mean anything until you attach nutrients onto the end of it. It means big. So I think it's funny. What are your macros? Like, what are you talking about?
Like what?
I was like, am I old when I'm saying, what the hell are you talking about? Macro? You mean macronutrients? You want to know what you're okay? Because there's the carbohydrates, protein, and fat. All right. Okay, yeah, cool. So let's find out what you need. It's just like the protein thing. Too many carbs. Do you know how many carbohydrates you need to eat in a day? Because you're telling me that you want to train for a half marathon. We got to talk about your carbohydrates. We've got to fuel your brain, not just your muscles.
Yes, yes. I have been sharing that tidbit with people of just like your brain needs carbs though.
Yeah.
So like you want to have a healthy brain though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
the, what is it? Is it the keto that cuts out, that hates carbs, or paleo?
Well,
I
yeah,
can't keep
both of
up.
them. They all do. I mean, every fad diet out there is going to point you towards yeses and nos. And
Yeah.
I've even seen certain principles of fad diets that are okay, that aren't so
Yeah,
terrible. Like they're onto something here to try to teach people how to eat a little bit better, but
right.
they're doing it at the expense of something else, or they're mislabeling a carbohydrate. There are apps out there that are designed to teach people to keep their carbohydrates at a dangerously low level, which is to the point where it is so far below the daily recommendation minimum for just for brain health that that is probably the only situation where I will say you need to stop doing that right now.
Right.
I'm serious. Do not mess with your brain. And glucose molecules, they break down, carbohydrates break down the glucose molecules. That is a straight up highway to our brain. It takes nutrients to our brain. In an emergency situation, our body is designed to run on only fat. It's like the backup generator. But when we force our bodies to always run on the backup generator, we are screwing with our metabolism big time. And so if you ask anyone who's been doing a hard diet, a hardcore carb cutting diet like Atkins, the old
Mhm.
paleo thing, old Atkins, which most people don't do anymore because they know that Mr. Atkins died of heart disease, is that, and that's beside the point. Maybe he had some genetic stuff going on and he didn't even eat his own food, but the point of that was cut all the good stuff out, eat all this meat and protein, and then you're going to lose weight. Is that the deficiency in these situations is not ideal. And so if we're running on that backup generator all the time, when someone's doing these fad diets, they'll say, I'm super hungry. They may say that if I even touch a carb, I'll put on all the weight back on. They may
Yep.
say that. If you're eating way too much protein, like 2 grams per kilogram, which is your weight, 2 grams of protein per kilo, that actually causes dehydration. Protein pulls water right out of the cell,
Mm.
sucks it right out. Just a little side note, if you ever watch a body, ever see people shooting dry protein powder, that's immediate dehydration. It starts to pull the skin to the muscle so they look more cut.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's how bodybuilding works. So it's not, and
That's
even
like,
a bodybuilder will tell you, I know exactly what I'm doing because it's supposed to be temporary, and then I'm going to go back to eating healthier once I get done with this competition. So they know that it's not the healthiest
the
sport, but it's not always
conversation for another day too,
right.
right?
Yeah, it's not always a terrible sport either. Yeah, so the deficiencies we can create from our brain from carbohydrates is scary. And what we are worried about is cognitive decline. And we often don't know that we have cognitive decline until it is too late.
Yeah.
So if you've ever seen anyone suffer from Alzheimer's dementia, it is more common in Scandinavians and Scandinavian descent. And we're, considering where we are, Carly, I have a huge, major Scandinavian
Yep.
background, and here in Minnesota, it's common. And it's not to say, grandma and grandpa ate bad, they eat, but if it's in the genetics, and then we're also eating in a way that's going to starve our brain. Another way of describing Alzheimer's disease is pre-diabetes,
Oh, wow.
because all of that fat is what we're forcing our body to run on, actually eating ourselves alive. And that can create some issue in the brain where there's plaques that develop. It's hard to clear it. And that is actually another way of describing insulin resistance. And that is why there's a relationship there with Alzheimer's and diabetes.
That is so, so fascinating. I watched one of my grandmas deteriorate from
Yeah.
and pass away this earlier this year in January, battle with that. And I've said this now on the podcast. People have heard me say this at nauseum, but she is one of my biggest whys,
Mm,
just because I think why I want to share information, why I want to like live a happier, healthier life myself, because watching her and knowing that we have more control over a situation like that than we've been led on to think,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's brutal. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a battle, and that is so interesting, the type 3 diabetes.
Hmm.
I just wanted to like pause and let that sink in for people, because that's a big thing. We're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia and having some power over that. And like
Hmm.
you said, there's genetics, there's other things, but
Hmm.
there's some power over that.
Yeah. We're 3 myths in, and look at how deep you can dig. right? When it comes to either the misinformation or things that we maybe could learn more about for our own benefit, for our whole family's benefit. I also watched my grandma about 15-year battle, and I never would have thought, is this related? Like, what?
Right.
This is so unfair. She lost all her fire, and she was full of. When people tell me that I'm like my grandma, I'm like, oh, I'm not losing my fire. I don't want to lose it. And it's so much of it is from this knowledge of the plant-based world, I think, where I get my fire from, and how much it saved my life with having, because I have a type of diabetes that's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
I'm not going to make insulin on my own. So that's why I take it very seriously with cognitive decline. And I have a lot of, wheels spinning in my head all the time when I learn more of people's stories as you do. You take on these stories and you hear so much, and you actually hear them waking up, and they get mad as, once they start to learn and be able to read fact from fiction. And none of this are theories. I mean, there's evidence-based science here just to simply tell us to eat more fiber, that fiber is really a guide to help with hydrates. If you are eating between 30 and 40 grams of fiber in a day, that's an extremely healthy amount of fiber. That is way above the average American to do 30 to 40 grams, but it's nowhere near the total amount of carbohydrates that your body needs in a day.
Wow.
So if you are an active female, I know that I eat like 20 to 25 grams, or excuse me, I eat 200 to 225 grams of carbohydrates a day. And I'm active probably 5 to 6 days a week. And
Do you think some
teach,
people just almost like shit their pants thinking about how much carbohydrates that they're like, what? Like,
and I'm 5'5". I am not a skinny girl. I never will be. I don't lift super heavy. I like to weightlift me happy, but I teach 3 spin classes a week, and I would teach every night if I could, if I had the following. I like being active and I need it, but just fuel my activity. And the combination of fiber plus activity is what keeps my blood sugars in a healthy range. So I actually eat more carbohydrates than probably 90% of people with type 1 diabetes, but it's to fuel the person that I am. It's not to fuel the diabetes. It's to fuel the person that I am.
Right.
And if I do the math, I should be landing in that range.
Wow. I know you're blowing people's minds right now.
Yeah. But then again, for you individuals that are listening, you want to know what you need.
Right.
And then you will feel confident about what you're eating and the timing of it and the grocery store and all of that. So, it's expensive.
Yeah.
The eating vegan is expensive. And yeah, it can be if you're eating out all the time. If I was in San Diego last month and I was like, oh my God, there's so much great vegan food in San Diego.
I haven't been to California yet, but I've had like 6 people in the last couple of months be like, just because you're vegan alone is reason that you need to go. And I was like, I know.
Yeah, there's a pretty good variety out there, but
that would be fun.
Right. But like, I don't eat pizza every single night anyways. And I certainly don't want to pay for a $25 pizza. And the cost of food has really gone up at restaurants right now. So where are you shopping is the first question. Then let's come up with a strategy as to how you can do this. How many people are in your family? How many of you are you trying to, towards more of a plant-based lifestyle that we can work it in right now? For the second time this already, and it's just Thursday, I have a crock pot, started in the morning, and I threw so much stuff in there. I put in like roasted corn, a can of roasted tomatoes. That was roasted frozen corn and then I've got some red potatoes in there with a bunch of beans, like the biggest beans I've ever seen. These huge white beans called Gordos. They're gigantic. There's so much fiber in that crock pot right now. I can't tell you. And per serving, it's also going to be a healthy amount of protein because these are all fiber-rich foods that also do contain protein. So people can get really worried about, it's too many carbs, but it's actually balanced because you're going to meet your protein needs if you're getting enough calories.
Right.
And let's back off on the carbohydrates here. Maybe we need to look at the portion size if you think you're eating too many carbs, but you're probably not. And doing any kind of soup, anything that's broth-based like that, tomato-based, that's a great way to save money. But the soups that are in a box, like it's a butternut squash or just a tomato.
Oh, yeah.
Right. They sound kind of like, I don't want that by itself. I use those and I do like a pour over with them. So I'll heat them up and turn them into a sauce. And I'll pour them over like a baked sweet potato or any other cooked type of a bowl that was a bean bowl. If it seemed just kind of bland and it needed some flavor, you can use like butternut squash as a topping.
Genius.
It's super good. And it's cheap. Yeah, it's pretty cheap. There's 4 servings in one of those boxes I know, is it their own brand? They had one for like $2.99, just that
Yeah.
in itself. So if you can plan to eat on $10 a day for one person, I know that can sound expensive, but think about it this way. If you spend $70 at the grocery store in a week, so that's $10 a day, $70 at the grocery store, that should feed at least one person. So I know there's two of us in this house that we can feed on $70 a week. And that's $5 a day of eating out of the home. And it could get even cheaper than that, depending on where you're shopping or how savvy of a budgeter you are.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it can get expensive. Eating out can get expensive. At home is not. Soups at home are not. Foods of the really, really whole foods, like bags of some things in bulk can really get you a long way. So there are people that like are so good at that. Person with I love, I mean, frozen veggies are great for you. They're flash frozen when they're fresh. You're not losing nutrients. Pop a whole bag of broccoli in and you can do a stir fry.
Yep.
So have some bits and also flavors, a spice rack. If you like low soy sauces, I love ginger and peanut sauce. Those are flavors. And the only thing I watch out for there added sugar. So it's not going to break the bank. If it feels like it is going to break the bank, that's where it comes time to start looking at your vegan bloggers, start looking for people who are really great in this area and they can help you budget. Even Snap. I think Snap has a vegan grocery list that people can access and see how far you can go on a Snap nutrition plan.
That's really cool. I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. Okay. What's the next one? I can't eat enough calories. We kind of talked about that. I've talked to some people, not a huge myth, but some people have said, like bigger, stronger athletes, I can't get enough calories if I'm plant-based. That is just a project in density. We would look at the density. Are you filling up too much on things like potatoes or wild rice, where you're eating a cup of that and you're getting super stuffed with a bunch of broccoli? And yeah, it's only like 300 to 400 calories and you're stuffed. We're going to have to look at the fats. We're going to look at nuts and seeds, like hemp seeds that go a long way, and probably increase fats. And is gaining weight on a vegan diet, we got to look at the nuts and seeds. I know the nut butters, they're awesome.
I know.
But yeah, it's even sprinkling, you get a tablespoon of hemp seed. That is a lot of calories, and it's good food. If you're afraid you're not going to meet your omega-3, well, then we're going to talk about getting omega-3 from other sources. But you don't need a lot of a flax seed or a hemp seed, a plant-based nut or seed to fulfill your. So it's just a conversation in portion size and density. And the last one is this is the big one. That's very simple. Athletes aren't vegan.
Oh my gosh.
It's just want to bet.
Yeah.
Tell me off. It's types of athletes. That's what's important. Kind of make the statement of the body endurance athletes. Right now, the World Cup is going on. I'm sure you could do a Google and find out which soccer players are plant-based. There's going to be somebody that's doing that. Alex Morgan, Dotsie Badman that I would have named, who's a cyclist, and she's got her podcast with non-dairy, and she's got this huge non-dairy campaign, and she can just go on and on about being an athlete and her story of how that improved her performance. So, but what's the Game Changers? Everybody's seen that, I hope. I'm listening and you haven't seen it, go get on the Game Changers.
Please watch it, because that one, I think, God, yeah, that just hits for so many different people than some of the other documentaries about stuff like this have. It just, and myself included, I was like, that film fired me up. Like my high school athlete inside of me was like, like, and even just, I'm still an athlete, but just that, like that, I don't know, that energy of that film was really fun and really amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I love how they showed the variety. They showed track athletes, they showed football, they had a range of what people are working on and what their goals are. And behind that, they have different protein, calorie, and carbohydrate needs. And they talked a lot about recovery and nutrition, which is good for athletes. With a couple, so they're doing 50K, 2 marathons in one night, who are vegan, and here they are, ultra runners. So there's our 6.
Pretty amazing, because, and like you said, we probably, there's 50 more myths that we could dive into, and maybe we will someday. I have a feeling you'll be back on the podcast again. I love chatting with you, but I'm like a squeaky wheel here, but your approach to this conversation is so refreshing, and I just vibe with so much, because you're like, here's the myth, here's why it's bullshit, not judging, But this is real information we have, this is real. You can't just say these blank statements if you're not willing to dive in a little bit more. And it's so important. And we need to look at food differently.
Yeah, I've really learned too that I wasn't born vegan. I certainly wasn't, right? Like we come
I
from a
grew up
culture.
hunting and fishing. So,
Yeah, see, we come from something, and we're gonna have people in our family that are challenged by who we are today. So as we talk about myths like this, it's delicacy and compassion, being delicate about our delivery in these conversations, in these topics in general, just because they touch on our culture, our holidays, our everything. When this comes out, who knows what fascinating story gathered from dealing with the Thanksgiving table, the Christmas table, the New Year's table, whatever, because that's for the families that's where we ask each other, where did we learn this from? And how can we heal and move forward like collectively with it?
Yeah, I like that too. How can we move forward collectively? Because I think that's one of the things that vegans and people who are plant-based and people want to have these conversations, like we all have to keep in mind, right? That it's a collective movement forward. And so to get mad or to isolate or to tell people that they're shitty is not collectively moving forward. It's just making people feel bad.
Right. And that's what spin class is for. If you're angry, you need anger management. Here's another plug, guys. If you're in Minnesota and you need anger management, just send me an email. I'll tell you where class is on Saturday morning or Tuesday night, because that is really what we use. Let exercise be your therapy. Let meditation or yoga or whatever personality you use, exercise should fit your personality, and that can be your greatest release. So before you pop off, and sure, you want to tell the world and scream from the rooftops about how fascinating our base worked for you and how wonderful and amazing it is. You're not lying, because it worked very, very well for you. But people are in such different places, and we all got there somehow.
Yep.
So
100%.
the grace and okay, I'm here, and I'll be here for you when you're ready to start talk this. If today is not the day, I will be here tomorrow.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Is there anything else that you want to share with listeners before the end of this episode?
You've got science, you've got evidence. Just be calm and go to the gym if you got to work it out.
I was just going to say, I'm going to the gym after this. So amazing. I so appreciate you and appreciate the knowledge you've shared with my listeners. I'm really thankful.
I appreciate you.
I am excited. Yes, exactly. I'm excited to share this. And if we have any questions or anything on this episode or any follow-up, I will send people your way. We're going to find you online, please.
Sure. Yeah. My name, so laurenplunkett.com. Instagram at Lauren Health. On LinkedIn, I'm not super great on, but I do fun on LinkedIn just because I got a lot of friends on there who are pretty funny. So my Instagram is positive. It's full of cats. It's got some food on it. So
it's very funny. I love it. You're very funny. Your stories make me laugh and giggle.
Yeah, I try to keep it light. It's a heavy, they can be a really heavy world of nutrition. So let's just have a little bit of fun, be nice, and giggle as much as we can.
That's good life advice. Thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Consciously Clueless. If you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, put it on social media. Don't forget to tag me. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods, leave a review. Reviews and shares help more people to see the podcast and join in on the fun. If you want to make sure to stay up to date on future episodes, follow me at Consciously Carly on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or Pinterest, and head to consciouslycarly.com to sign up for the newsletter. Ready for more conscious living content? Check out patreon.com/consciouslycarly and join the exclusive community over there. And finally, if you're ready to take better care of yourself and the world, let's work together. Click the link in the show notes to head to the website, find out more, and schedule a free discovery call with me. Chat soon! In 2016, Mint Mobile was born because its founders thought that big wireless was, well, dumb. So they decided it was time to create a smarter wireless company, one that extends its middle finger to conventional truths while also pointing out where big wireless is letting people down. They're online only. You can buy plans that are 3-month, 6-month, 12-month, no contracts. Choose to stay as long as you want. There are no overages. There's no surprises. There's just no BS. And for someone who lives in a remote area like myself, I can attest to the fact that the service is great and I have truly had no problems and oftentimes is better than the big wireless companies I was with before. To find out more about how Mint Mobile can work for you, hit the link in the show notes so they know that I sent you.